Hi, everybody. This is George. We had a good session last night in the live session, so I appreciate everybody that was able to attend. What I want to do from that, instead of just posting the whole session, is I want to make a couple recordings that will be a little bit more focused for our needs right now. So, like for instance, storyboarding is what's coming up. So that's what we're directly looking into. So we're going to go over storyboarding in more in depth, and we're going to go over a few tools to use as well. There were some excellent questions that came up last night that I wanted to address, and those questions is how do we select a tool? What do we know? What do we do if we select the wrong tool? So we're going to go through right now a little process to help us decide on what tool. So hopefully by the time we're done with this, you will select a tool that fits well for what the project that you're doing. If you don't select the right tool, what basically happens is you put in a lot of extra work trying to make things kind of come together and fit correctly. And usually the only time that we do this when we pick the wrong tools when we pick the tool first. So what we have to keep in mind, always keep in mind, is the learning is the most important piece. So don't get lost on using our tools. You look at the learning first. Always, always, always the learning first. Because we see this all the time where people get enamored by certain tools and they want to try them. We've even had some examples in our discussions where this has happened. And it generally, sometimes it works, but most of the time it doesn't work, and it tends to give you a lot more work than what you should be doing, and it slows down your pace as well. So the first thing we do is define who our learners are. I'm going to post a couple documents. One of them is an old course design document that we used probably 10 years ago, but it has a decent, one of the pages in there was a decent way to help define the learners and who they are, where they're at as far as technology and such goes. If you're not able to get a clear understanding of your learners, always just fall back to your objectives and fall back to multiple ways of doing things. So it could be text, could be video, but just fall back to the learning goal, to the objective. That's where we always want to default back if there's ever any questions. Then you want, once you get your learners, you want to define your content. So define what has to happen in order to meet your objective, because we always look back at the objective. So what sort of content needs to go back to your objective? One of the things that can kind of drive content or the way you approach content is the experience of the participants. If they're highly experienced, maybe you want it to be a little more self-paced, self-controlled. If they're not very experienced, maybe you want a little bit more control over, so you force certain content. And there may be reasonable, it may be mandatory as well. So there's all sorts of different requirements put on us where we have to adjust our content, how we deliver the content, not what it is, but how it's delivered. And then types of interactions. How are people going to interact with the material, with the content? Because remember, we talked earlier, people actually make a relationship with the curriculum, with the content, and a big piece of that is how they interact with it. So we can get a data dump from Google. I mean, let's face it, we can get tons and tons and tons of information straight from Google. But what makes you as a designer separate from all that is how the learner engages and interacts with that content. So that's what drives the meaning for it, because a data dump is not meaningful, but the interaction is. And then you're going to create the storyboard. Now, there were some questions last night on storyboards and examples and things like that. So what I did was I brought up one of mine that I usually use, and it's pretty simple. Here, instead of storyboards, and I'll post an attachment with it. I put the title here, so whatever it may be, and then real simple objective, learner interactions that I want to have in it, the graphics or the media. If it's going to be just a picture, I'll post a thumbnail of the picture right there, or a video, maybe a link, or actually embed the video. It's up to you how far you want to take. And then the content, exactly what the learner has to know about it, so the knowledge-based content, or are we going to go beyond knowledge? Are we going to go into um, eh, the ability to get some higher learning going on? And that's my hope, is that within our projects we get that higher learning, so the content will drive the higher learning. So the the learner interactions and the content are going to be able to what creates our higher learning, and we're going to know it's higher learning by our objective, because we'll have it written out by Horton or Meg, or however you choose to go. So an example for an objective was each learner will be able to synthesize, or one of those types of higher learning verbs, and we're also going to say how well it's going to be done, and then how well speaks directly to our assessment. So assessment can be a fantastic learning tool as well, because remember, there's formative assessment, there's summative assessment. So, and sometimes this may be blank. So you can have an objective over several slides. Just because it's one slide, one piece of the storyboard, doesn't mean that it's going to have that one objective, but you'll have that objective, learner interactions, and then the content. So you may have several storyboards, several pieces of content, several different interactions that meet the same objective, and that is absolutely okay. I generally don't just use one slide for one objective, the content. It can happen, but if you want to get to that higher level of learning, those higher standards, then you're probably going to have multiple interaction types and multiple pieces of content to get to that one objective. So that's highly possible. And in the assessment, remember, if you're going to do a formative assessment or summative assessment, just make sure it matches the objective. And when it does, remember, we're e-learning, so it doesn't just have to be a written test. It could be, there's all kinds of tools out there for drag and drop, different sort of things. If you want to use formative assessments, you can use your storyboard to branch things off. So you may need a piece on the storyboard to underneath assessment. So if the learner scores 60% or less, go here. If learner scores above 60%, go here. So you're actually just kind of telling yourself where to go, what to do with this storyboard. And this is a simple way to do it. There's plenty of options in our plenty of examples, I should say, in our classroom as well. And I'll be posting this one within the discussion forums, also along with the course design toolkit that we made 10 years ago. So you can look through that, take whatever you want out of it. Some of it's fairly too old. 10 years is too old, but some of it still pertains. So feel free to use that as well. So that's sort of the storyboards that we were talking about last night, and some people wanted examples. So here's the example: objective, interactions, graphics, media, the assessment, and then the content. I just happen to like the different color schemes because that helps me to focus on what I'm looking at. Feel free to just use a simple 3-column format in Word where it says objective, interaction, graphic, or content, interaction, graphic. So feel free to do things like that as well. There's plenty of examples where people did it by hand. I happen to like it on PowerPoint, so I can store it to the cloud and I always have it. So I can do it on, look at it wherever I need it. So that's just one option there. So we're going to look at HapYak, Captivate left there. So in the future, we're going to do Captivate, HapYak, Adobe Suite for mobile. That's what we're going to look at as far as tools. But right now, what I want us to do is kind of get lost in the process. So the process right now is we're going to be looking at the storyboard. That's going to be assignment 2. We have objectives and things that we're discussing in the discussion forums, which is going to be assignment 1, a part of that. But I want everybody to kind of start looking at storyboards, because in the rapid prototyping, it's not linear. There's several overlapping pieces. So I want to go ahead and start that thought process going with the storyboards. So in terms of keeping things short and concise for our online environment, I'm going to do a tutorial on Captivate, HapYak, and the Adobe Suite here, but I'll post them separately so you can just focus on whatever you want. So that's storyboarding. And the storyboarding, whoops, what I failed to mention, and oh, I didn't put it down there, I'm sorry, is on, this is the one that you're going to get right here. Best tool for the job, alternate tool for the job. So that's how you're going to let your storyboard and let your objectives and everything else, whoops, typo, get your tools. So that's how you're going to be able to select the best tool for the job. So that's how we're going to have a learner centered approach to selecting the tool rather than a tool centered approach. Because if anybody says, oh, I have this great app, or I have this great whatever, that's kind of going in things the opposite direction. So that's like having a solution looking for a problem. And we see that all the time in many different things. So don't have a solution ready to find a problem. Understand what your learning needs to be, then go look for the tool or the solution for that. And that is where you put it right here. So I'm going to be posting this in our discussion forum where we can share different documents. I'll share this one in the other document, and I hope it's helpful. So have a fantastic day, and I'll be posting those other tools later on this week and next week.